Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and today, fingers crossed, I try and start the 680. Oh, I'm excited. It's coming down to the wire, and if everything goes to plan, the 680 will be running today. Do I actually think that's going to happen? You guys will have to wait to find out, and so will I, because I have no idea. But first things first, I have to go through and I have to fill up the fluids in everything. Gearbox, diff, engine, radiator, fuel, everything. So lots of fluids today, so let's get into it. So first job I'm going to tackle is drain the oil. So undo the plug at the base here, drain all the oil out, whatever's in there. There's probably not a lot left in there. Then open up the fill hole on the side, fill it all the way up until it's just starting to come out, and that should be good. Well, that's not good. My mic battery's gone flat again, but as you can see here, I pulled the sump plug off of the gearbox, and there are really big chunks of metal in the bottom, particularly stuck to this magnetic sump plug. It is not a good sign. I am pretty sure that this gearbox is toast, so I'll probably have to head up to Zach and see if I can get another one and swap it out. But either way, I'm going to keep going for now and fill it up with oil, so at least I can just see if the car is actually going to run, and I'll sort out the gearbox and stuff later. So now it's time to fill the gearbox with oil, and the way to do that in the side of the gearbox, because you've got to come up from underneath, there's no top access, you basically need one of these pumps. This is just a super cheap item. It works great. And you just decant the oil out into the pump and pump away. That'd be right. I never looked at this before. But now that I have to fill the diff up, I've just realised that I'm not going to be able to get the filling nut is up behind this this bar here, and there's the drain nut that's here. So I have to loosen off the diff again and move it slightly forward so that I can undo everything. All right, let's fill the diff. That actually looks pretty clean. After all that, I probably could have left it in there because that looks brand new. That's really annoying. Oh, now I've got to plug it up, fill it back up again, and put it all back together again. Ah! Thankfully, that was not as painful as I thought it was going to be. I did lift the diff up and move it forward slightly, keeping it all connected everywhere else, just disconnected the mounts and lifted it forward, and it got me access to undo the drain plug and the fill plug. But I managed to actually put it back into its proper mounting position, so it was horizontal, and fill it up, and just getting a pry bar, I managed to get enough space just to get the plug back on. It was like only a millimetre too tight, so managed to get that in, get the plug back in, and the diff is all full of fluid. So that means moving forward, and the next job is actually I want to pre-prime the engine with oil. And the best way I've seen to do that, I've seen a couple of different methods, and the way I'm going to try and do it is I'm going to actually take the oil pump back off again, and yeah, I'll show you how I'm going to do it. Okay, so I've pulled the pump back out and the shaft. Now this shaft actually drives the distributor at the top. It goes diagonally through the engine, and this actually, this cog here is driven by the crank. Now I want to remove this so that I can actually turn over the pump without the crank going, so I can actually just sort of pump oil through the engine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill this up, fill the oil pump up directly with oil, and then chuck it back into the car with oil, and then fill the oil up from the top, and then try and rotate this somehow, and see if I can actually get oil priming through the engine. That's the plan anyway. Alright, oil pump is full of oil now. I've pulled the rocket cover back off. I'm going to make sure everything is nicely lubricated all inside there, pour the oil all into the engine, fill it up with oil, and then I'm going to try and crank over this oil pump and see if I can actually get some oil flow coming out of this engine. Just want to say a quick shout out to Penrite as well. Penrite has hooked me up with all the fluids for this car. This is some running in oil that I'm using. So this is obviously only going to be used for the first hour or so of running, just so that I can make sure that everything is turning over nicely, and then I'll dump it out and I'll fill it up with some nice fresh stuff. All right, well, I've got oil in the block now, so now it's time to see if I can work out how to turn over this oil pump. So what I've done here is I've cobbled together all of my little 1/4-inch socket extensions, and on the end I've just got a flat blade screwdriver tip, and I'm using my drill in reverse. I'm just slowly turning it over. Yes! That's what we wanted. Nice oil flow coming out of the cam there. You can see it was coming out of the holes. So we have oil flow all through the engine. Time to get the car back up again, pull the oil pump off again, make sure it's at top dead center, get the timing right, because obviously that shaft is the timing for the distributor. So oil pump off, get everything back in the way it's supposed to, all lined up right, and button it up, and we have oil in the engine. Yeah! All right, oil is done. We're chipping away at these fluids. So next thing is I'm going to top up the radiator. I'm not going to put proper coolant in it for now. I'm just going to chuck in some tap water, just because I want to make sure that there's no leaks, and I'm not just going to waste a whole bunch of coolant. Fill up the radiator and see if it actually holds water. Okay, full of liquid. There is a slight leak around the thermostat. This the housing is quite corroded, so it's probably just leaking past the rough area there. I'll have a look into that further. I've done it up a bit tighter, but I'm not overly concerned for now. Cooling is not going to be a big issue for the time being, because it's still a little way off getting on the road. So moving forward. Okay, so now all of the fluids in the engine bay are sorted out, and we have gearbox and diff oil in. We need to go back and put some petrol in it, and those of you who may remember when I pulled the petrol tank out, it's actually got the filler hose has got a big crack in it, big split in it. So I'm going to go under there and see if I can sort of rig something so that it doesn't leak horribly when I try and fill it up. Well, as you can see there, the fuel filler neck is completely perished beyond repair. I thought I might have been able to cut it off at the crack there and slide it down over the top, but that is not going to work. So I'm just going to have to fill the tank as it is and sort that out before we actually get this thing on the road so it doesn't catch fire and burn me to the ground. Well, that is even worse than I thought, because all of that fuel is going straight down and just pouring in a big puddle under the car. It's I don't know if any of it's actually going into the tank. So I'm going to have to rethink this to try and get some fuel into the tank so I can at least test the engine. So I've come up with an ingenious / moronic plan is to get fuel into the tank is I've got a couple of funnel extensions here that I'm going to feed down into the tank. And then I've got another small little jerry can here, which has another flexible extension, which should just be long enough to be able to fill it up and get the fuel into the car. So we'll see how that goes. I just want to get some fuel in it so I can get it running. Well, before we go messing around with things, let's just directly power the fuel pump with the power scanner, which is fused. Why is that making such a terrible noise? Okay, so I just realised that the noise was actually just, it was running dry, but as soon as it started getting fuel through it, it quietened right down. And now basically I've just, I can just stick my power probe in here and send power to it. And it's much quieter now. You can hear it's actually pumping fuel. So it's doing its job. So I'm going to run that for a little bit and then we'll see what it looks like in the engine bay. All right, I reconnected the spark plugs, but I've actually disconnected the coil. I don't want it to actually fire at the moment. I just want to turn it over for a little bit and just see if it'll turn over, see if it'll crank. Let's just one step at a time. We're definitely not getting a start, so let's see what's going on there. It's looking like we've got a dodgy starter motor. I did check it before I put it in and made sure that it turned over and started, but as I'm going in now, and I'm actually just physically jumping the terminal so that it should actually fire, and nothing is happening. So, you know, it should. There should be something there, and there's nothing. So I don't know if I've got a dead solenoid or what, but that's really, really frustrating because there's not much else I can do without another starter motor right here, right now. Ah! Okay, progress. It seems like what I've actually done is with my playing around with the terminals on the starter motor, trying to send power signals all over the place, I actually disconnected the wire going to the motor itself. So we actually have a starter. If I actually connect up my power scanner and I energize the solenoid, we have a car that turns over. Yeah! Next thing to try, I suppose, is see if we're getting spark. Okay, I've still got a few bits to track down that aren't making a lot of sense, but for now I've directly wired the coil to positive, so I'm just going to try now again and see if we have spark with the coil where I know it's connected. Well, that is very frustrating. At this stage, I get the feeling that the distributor is not working for some reason. I need to do a bit more research. Any of you guys can point me in the right direction and how to test this. I believe it's like a 280ZX distributor. If you can give me some pointers to testing it, that would be great. From what I gather, it's wired up correctly. So basically, I've got the positive side of the coil going to the B side of the distributor, the B connection, and the C connection goes to the negative side. I've checked the continuity through from the lines on the coil here, going through to the plug on the distributor. I've cleaned up the terminals inside the distributor and the cap, the rotor and the cap. I don't know, maybe my distributor is bad. There is a little bit of, or there was a little bit of sort of discoloration on the rotor itself. There was a little bit of, it looked like a hot terminal had gone past there. So maybe my rotor and cap are bad. I have no idea, but at this stage, she ain't working. Either way, it's definitely all the time I have today. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you want to watch the videos a day early, you can join us up on Patreon and help us out. I'll see you next time. See you guys.